Hello, my dear student. Welcome to another edition of your mathematics lesson. Today, in continuation with your main topic, that is arithmetic of finance. What we are going to learn today is how to calculate the compound interest using the formula. So let's begin. After completing the very lesson today, my dear student, will be able to calculate the compound interest using the compound interest formula. This is what I hope you'll be able to do after completing the very lesson today. So as usual, my dear student, in your favorite segment of the lesson, today also I'll give you another group of special numbers. This group of special numbers are called the neon numbers. I will explain what are neon numbers with an example after completing my lesson today, so don't go away. So to begin the lesson, let's just see the formula that we're going to use to find, to calculate the compound interest using the formula. So it says, suppose the principal P, that is the amount of money invested or borrowed, at R% per annum, and under this type of interest, compound interest, not a simple interest. Then the amount of the investment, that is the value of the investment E, after any years, is now given by this formula. This is E for the final amount, that is the value of the investment, equals to P multiplied by the bracket. What is in the bracket is 1 plus this fraction R over 100, and the bracket raised to the power of n, where n is the number of years, P is the money invested or saved, while R is the rate of interest. So this is the formula that we shall be using to find the final amount of that investment after n years. So let's just move and take examples. Example number 1, it says find the amount and the compound interest when this 25,000 naira is invested for 80 years at 4% per annum compound interest. So solution to this very problem. So writing the formula, that is amount E equals to P multiplied by the bracket. What is in the bracket is now 1 plus R over 100, and outside the bracket raised to the power of n. So amount after 80 years will now be n will now be 8. P is 25,000. R is this 4%. So let me just substitute in the formula to get the final amount, because the question asks us to find the amount. So let me just substitute. I replaced this P by 25,000 times my bracket. R inside the bracket is 1 plus 4 over 100. I have replaced this R by 4 because R represented this 4%, the rate, divided by 100, and that bracket raised to the power of 8. 8 is my n, that is the number of years. So I continue. So what I'm going to do next is to divide this 4 by 100 to get the decimal equivalent. Let me do that. I'm going to have my 25,000 multiplied by the bracket, and that bracket after dividing 4 by 100 to get to 0.04, and I added that 0.04 to this one to get 1.04. The bracket raised to the power of 8, look at it, I just copied. So what I'm going to do next is to use your calculator to find 1.04 raised to the power of 8. So evaluate this to the power of 8. When that is now done correctly, you are now going to have 1.3686 multiplied by this 25,000. So this multiplication, if it's done correctly, you now have 34,214,023 kobo. This will now be the money. This 25,000 naira will now become this 34,214 naira after this 80 years. So we have now obtained the amount, but the question says again we have to find the compound interest. So to get the compound interest, what we simply do is to remove the original money from the total money after 80 years. So there we'll now get the compound interest, that is the final amount minus the original amount. The final amount is this 34,214, while the original amount is this 25,000 that we have invested. So there we substitute. If we done this subtraction correctly, you now have 9,214 naira 23 kobo. This will now be the interest. This 25,000 naira will now generate in this 80 years if the interest rate is this 4%. You can see this if it were a normal method of finding compound interest. We have to do this calculating interest in 8 different times. But you can see with the formula, we have just obtain it just as quick as possible. So let's just move and take another example. Example number 2, it says a man wishes to buy a car, and that car is worth 3 million naira, and he wanted to buy that car in 5 years' the time. That is his plan. The question asked here is how much must he invest in a bank that offers 20% compound interest per annum? So solution to this very problem, this man is too ambitious. He wanted to buy this car that is worth 3 million, and he wanted to buy it in 5 years' the time. That is according to his plan. And what is his problem now? How much must he now deposit in a bank? And if the bank now offers 20% compounding, how much must he deposit in a bank so that after 5 years, that amount plus the interest that is going to generate in those 5 years will amount to this 3 million naira. So let's see. So we'll now use the formula for finding the final amount, which is now A equals to P multiplied by the bracket. R inside the bracket is 1 plus R over 100, and the bracket raised to the power of n. This is the formula for finding final amount after compound interest. So the final amount is this 3 million that he wanted to get. And the problem is what money must he invest now? That is P. The R is 20. Let me just substitute there. So you now have the 3 million equals to P, which we wanted to find, times the bracket inside the bracket is 1 plus 20 over 100. 20 is your R. Then multiplied, close the bracket, raised to the power of 5. 5 is your N, that is the number of years. So dividing 20 by 100 gives you 0.2, and that 0.2 plus 1 gives you 1.2. So let me do that. So I have my 3 million equals to P times the bracket, and this bracket is 1.2 raised to the power of 5. So I'll now get what is 1.2 raised to the power of 5. If done correctly, you now have 2.48832. So there, to get the P, we simply divide both sides by this 2.48832. So there will now be my P, 3 million divided by 2.48832. And if this division is done correctly, you now have your P to be equals to 1,205,632,072 kobo. So this is the money the man will now deposit in a bank, and after 5 years, he will now collect this 3 million and buy his new car. My dear student, with the few examples given, I hope you'll be able to find or calculate compound interest using the compound interest formula. Thank you for your attention. Let me just move to the last segment. Maths is fun, and explain what are neon numbers. A number is neon if what to happen if the sum of the digits in the square of that very number is equal to the number itself. Then that number is called a neon number. That is, if you are to find the square of the number, and the result of that very square, if you add those digits in the result, what you are getting is the number back. That is your original number. Then that very number is neon. Let's take examples of neon number. 9 is a neon number. And what we'll now do, we'll now find the 9 square. So 9 square will give us answer 81. If I add those digits in the square of 9, that is 8 and 1. If I add 8 and 1, it will give me my original number back. So addition of 8 and 1 gives me 9. Then 9 is neon because the definition says if you find the square of that number and in that square you add those digits in the square, what you get is the number back. There are only 3 neon numbers from 1 to 1,000, and the 3 neon numbers you can have only will now be 0, 1, and 9. These are the only 3 numbers from 1 to 1,000. You won't have any neon number apart from these 3 in this very range. We see more of these interesting things in mathematics in our subsequent lessons.